So thank you, LabRoots organizers, for giving me the opportunity to speak today about using artificial intelligence and predictive algorithms to help advance cancer patients identify the best treatment options. So my name is Kenny Wong, and I am the Chief Product Officer at xCures. That's also my disclosure because we do have a product that does this. In terms of my background, I am a board-certified genetic counselor, so I was previously seeing patients at UCSF Medical Center over 12 years ago. And then I spent the last decade in product management in lab diagnostic test, where I was an early employee at Counsyl, and we sold the company to Myriad Genetics a few years ago. And then most recently, I was also at a startup called GenomeSmart, which was acquired by Ambry Genetics, where we were developing an AI software to match patients to the right genetic testing within a 7-minute questionnaire. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, physicians in general are overwhelmed across all industries or all verticals. Within oncology specifically, there's over 1.7 million new diagnoses per year. And also, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, or ASCO, project that by 2025, there will be a shortage of over 2,200 oncologists by then. In addition to that, there's also a lot of information they need to know. So there's over 600 approved or standard treatment options for patients, cancer patients in general. And if you look at genetics specifically, there's over 400 genes and over 23,000 actionable variants implicated in cancer, which is mapped to 457 targeted therapies. And the guidelines are getting more complex year over year. So in this graph, what you're seeing is the average page volume of NCCN guidelines, or the National Comprehensive Cancer Network clinical practice guidelines by disease site. And that has increased drastically in the last 2 decades. It's now hovering around 100 to 300 pages. So it's a lot of information that physicians need to know. Now, also, if you look at it from the patient side, advanced cancer patients need help. By definition, these are patients that have exhausted standard of care. They have less than 1 in 2 chance of a 5-year survival. So by default, they are often very, very scared and confused. There's also an urgent sense of finding innovative therapies to help themselves. And because of the state that they're at, they're also trying to Google online, look online for more information about treatments they should consider. So they also need help in understanding these options as well. So what we're proposing is, what if we can actually develop a patient-centric precision oncology platform? And that's sort of what we have done here at xCures, where you want to empower patients and their doctors with the right information so that they could prioritize and access the best treatment options and tests to help them beat advanced cancer. Utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning tools, integrating public data for information such as clinicaltrials.gov, proprietary knowledge from physicians in terms of what they have done in the past and why, and expert insights as well. So what we want to do is create a learning system that's efficiently incorporating results from all patients on all therapies at all times. If you also think about it from sort of a drug development company standpoint as well, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the vast majority of patients, over 95% of patients, don't qualify or don't participate in clinical trials. It's maybe because of it's not near where they currently live, they're not able to travel to those sites, or they don't meet the inclusion-exclusion criteria. And to give you a sense of the overall market here as well, advanced cancer kills over 600,000 patients annually in the United States. So what if you can also learn and also give access to the 95% of patients that can't get into clinical trials? What if you can give them access to these investigational therapies through Right to Try or managed access programs, for example, and you can still continuously learn from them by gathering the real-world data through prospective observational studies. And so this gives you the ability to learn from all patients, and you can then also then give that learning back in order to help future patients as well. So in order to build this platform, these are the challenges that we have defined and have solved in order to build this platform to help patients. So first of all, you need to be able to understand the patient that you're trying to help, right? You need to understand what we call the cancer journey, what is their current clinical situation. You also need to be able to track longitudinal outcomes as well. In order to do that, on the bottom left side, you can see our solution. You really need to be able to build a means to gather real world data in a HIPAA compliant storage, a master protocol for good clinical practice or GCP, and also data that's structuring the data in the right way so that it could be regulatory grade and could be used for future submissions, for example, by pharma to the FDA. You also then need to know the right treatments, what should be considered for these patients, and also how to get it as well, because it's not useful to present patients and physicians with options that they don't know how to get access to for these treatments. So what you need to do is build an options library with a list of treatment options, but also present why, what we call the medical rationales, why physicians historically has recommended such treatment options to patients, and also how do you access these therapies that they may be interested in. And finally, you also need an engine that can recommend the right options, and you also want to learn from it as well. So a learning system, so you're consistently learning and improving it, and so that you could input that learning back into future patients. So you need a platform that can understand oncology and capture the knowledge and learn from that as well. And that's where we're using artificial intelligence and machine learning, learning from experts, gathering their insights, and incorporating it back into our engine, and also using the natural language processing and also predictive modeling to predict based on the options that we would represent how patients would do. And so you can rank them accordingly as well, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So just to give you a high-level overview of what we have built, so you would be able, as you can see on the left-hand side, ingest public knowledge from information such as clinicaltrials.gov or literature that's published, and also on a case-by-case basis, patient case summaries from medical records, and then using natural language processing and Bayesian multi-level modeling, you can then be able to produce treatment options and rank them as well, in addition to the medical treatment rationale, the why we would be recommending such treatment options for patients and physicians to consider. And for these patients, they could be considered by either oncologists themselves, the treating oncologists, or molecular tumor boards, and they could then sort of give us input in terms of whether these options are useful or not, and we can then incorporate that learning back into the system to ensure that that would help future patients as well. So we want to gather the clinical utility and continuously learn from that, but I think in the long term, most importantly, we also want to gather the patient outcomes data as well. So as a result of patients proceeding with such recommendations, how did they do? And that ultimately would be the source of truth in terms of which recommendations would fare better in the future for other patients as well. So ultimately, this will be a win-win situation where more patients are getting more treatment options. In exchange for us, at least from our business model, we are in exchange of this no charge, no fee service for patients. They are providing us their anonymized data for use so we can improve the system for future patients. And this approach would generate more data, which would be beneficial for both physicians and the pharmaceutical companies so they can develop new therapies faster. Each turn through the virtuous flywheel will help improve the lives of future cancer patients as well. And here's some initial validation data when we were initially in development phase of this algorithm a while ago. So looking at the Mosella brain cancer registry in the last 2 decades of about 451 glioma patients. So these are non-randomized, self-reported, and based on the data that was collected via web-based patient-reported outcome survey, we fit a Bayesian multi-level model to this virtual trial data, and we were able to accurately predict the outcomes of several large phase 3, these are safety and efficacy randomized clinical trials. And so with a little over a third of the patient numbers that's needed for these 3 set of trials, so 451 compared to close to 1,500, we were able to directionally project the log survival ratios, as you can see on the right-hand side, for these combinations for lomustine and temozolomide versus temozolomide alone, or lomustine plus bevacizumab versus lomustine, and also temozolomide plus bevacizumab versus temozolomide alone. And so as you can see here, we were able to project that the log survival ratio directionally is better with the combination of lomustine plus temozolomide. And here's another patient that has went through our platform where they were an exceptional responder to Opti through our managed access program or expanded access program. So this was a pediatric patient with URCH3K27M mutation, diffuse midline gliomas of the thalamus. This tends to be, this is a grade 4 cancer, so very severe. This patient was wheelchair bound and had already failed 3 lines of therapy. And he received Opti via our expanded access program, like I mentioned earlier, and he has an ongoing partial response to single agent of Opti, which led to an 81% reduction on tumor load from the start of Opti, which was incredible. The patient right now, after 2 years, continues to do very well on a single agent of Opti. He's now attending school and can now also ride a bicycle as well, compared to when he was wheelchair bound 2 years ago. And so gathering this real world data for pharmaceutical companies are very valuable. Just to give you an example, for this brain cancer drug, about 20% of the data from managed access programs was being used as part of a submission, integrated analysis submission with the clinical trial data for a new drug application with the FDA. So the value of what we are providing here is not only to patients, but is also beneficial for pharma companies as well to accelerate the drug development process. Thank you.